Hi there. I have read your discussion board posts and reviewed all of your portfolios today. I'm giving you feedback in your rubrics that are associated with each of these assignments for your feedback. We'll start with the discussion board. I feel like this discussion board is vital. It's one that during the course revision about a year ago I added because it had been my experience just working as a nurse educator for the past 7 or 8 years that there were so many people that did not fully understand how to honor copyright laws when they were producing educational material. That our good intentions of giving students lots of ways to look at information and lots of resources, that we were actually violating copyright laws. So this discussion board, I know probably felt like a little much to be in a discussion board, but I wanted you all to share your ideas and your insights and to really think about the assignment topics. So lots of good stuff there. Two interesting things came out. One of your classmates, Charlene, brought up the point about how we use textbook information. And I think that is a really important point to bring up. What Charlene's discussion board reminded us is that when you shift textbooks from one textbook to another, sometimes in our learning management systems, we carry over coursework and we carry over course information. The information that is in your learning management system for that course has to be congruent with your adopted textbook. So if you're using material that is from other textbooks that you have not adopted for your course, you're actually violating those textbook authors' copyright laws. So again, that's something that I don't want to. No, I can say that. It's almost common practice. You see fragments of bits and pieces of things from other textbooks in other courses. So know that there are provisions for hanging on to small pieces of content that have to be properly cited, but hanging on to test data banks or large chapters, all that stuff is not okay as far as copyright goes. So I appreciate Charlene reminding us of that. The other thing that came up that Laura did, and I'm going to post a link to Laura's editorial from Dr. Joyce Fitzpatrick. Dr. Fitzpatrick is a well-regarded editor for multiple magazines and is currently the editor of, I think it's the Journal of Nursing Education right now. Fantastic author and educator. She wrote a one-piece page about predatory journals, and it's something that as you move to the end of your MSN journey and into potentially a doctoral degree, you're going to want to be very careful thinking about who you send your papers to have considered for publication. You also want to be very careful about who you cite as sources, because predatory journals that are basically a pay-to-play system, people pay into the journal, they send them money to get their journals published, to get their articles published. Those articles are not vetted. They don't go through the rigorous editorial process. They don't go through verification of background or scholarly efforts. Nothing. Basically, you're paying to get your stuff placed on the internet. And as you can see, the puppies are back from their walk. Sorry. So I want you to be thoughtful about what predatory journals would look like, and I'm going to put a link to the website that Laura located for her discussion board. Appreciate the reminders to be aware that just because you find it on the internet and it appears to be scholarly, that it isn't always. So great insights. The next thing, your portfolios. One of the things I saw many of you did not add to your portfolios was scholarship. And that is not uncommon for nurses who are at the bedside or nurses who are novice nurses who haven't been in practice very long. But I do want to caution you that sometimes we forget that a lot of what we do would be considered scholarship. I want you to really think and ask yourself, have I done something that has contributed to the learning of others? Did you host an in-service? Have you gone to a staff meeting and presented on a topic? Have you spoken at a meeting like at the Week of the Nurse when we really encourage nurses to get out there? Did you go and present a poster? Did you go to a in-service for another department and share in a roundtable or a panel discussion? All of those things are scholarship. Think about scholarship as disseminating information to others. think sometimes we dismiss the things that we do that feel like just work. Just because you haven't been buried in the literature and written this long published paper doesn't mean that you haven't been participating in scholarship. If you are employed at a magnet facility, scholarship is an expectation as your practice of as a nurse. So I want you to just think about whether you need to go back in and revise that. Okay, one thing to remind you as you go through the portfolio feedback, you could have a fantastic grade and have lots of feedback. It is important that you integrate the feedback as appropriate into your portfolio as we move forward. Just like your integrative literature review, Part 2 builds on Part 1. So before you start Part 2 of your portfolio, go back in, read my feedback, and apply what is necessary to improve the starting point where you'll pick up on Part 2. Your final project, Part 3 of either your ILR or your portfolio, should reflect changes to Part 1 and Part 2. And anytime I'm grading this, I start at the very beginning and I work my way back through. So if you were continuing to show the same errors, you're going to continue to not be as successful as you'd like to be. So I want you to be thoughtful about applying feedback that's appropriate. Now, I may ask you a question and say, you sure you've thought about this? And if you answer in your own head, yep, I thought about it, and you keep moving, that's okay. But if I've directed you and said, you need to remove this or you need to edit this, then it's expected that you're doing that. I can't think if there weren't really any, the one common error that I saw was the demonstration of the NLN competencies in your portfolio. Your professional expertise and your teaching philosophy, both of those should have had some sort of NLN context to them, and you're going to take the NLN competency, put it in a bracket at the end of the sentence, or even at the beginning of the section if it's included in there. Your resume may or may not have had any, but that's expected in each and every section as you move forward. So go back into Part 1, add the NLN competencies where appropriate, and then plan on doing that to Part 3. Or Part 2. Okay, let's talk about your PICO question. This morning, Madeline has a very hard time holding on to her bones with both of her paws. So hopefully we'll only see her pick it up once. Part 1. This morning when I sent the announcements, I sent a link to the PICO format tutorial that I did on the Spark video. So make sure you review that. Remind you that your integrative literature review must be about your role in some capacity as a nurse educator. It should not be topic specific to something that is disease-oriented or even patient-oriented. It should be really focused on a student population. You can do it from a healthcare perspective. If you're in the hospital, nothing wrong with that. Pick a topic that's appropriate for your role as an educator in the hospital. You should not really be focusing on educating patients because that's your job as a bedside nurse. The idea is to elevate this to focus on the role of the nurse educator. This first section is that there should be a few key things. First, your PICO question. What is it and how does it break down into the PICO format? And then a background. Why does this question matter? Give me some detail about a little bit about the so what factor. If you're going to research looking at the role of adjuncts in the clinical experience and you're going to do something with that, then you need to tell me why the role of adjuncts matters and how they influence clinical practice or how they evaluate student outcomes, whatever you want to focus on. But just tell me why it matters, and it needs to be supported. I think someone had asked on the Ask the Professor link about those 5 to 7 references. Most of the time, those 5 to 7 references are used in this first section to give the background, the underpinning, the explanation of why it matters. It's not uncommon for your textbooks to be used and several scholarly articles that give relevance to your topic. Okay, you get your PICO question, you got some background information, and then you're going to give me the blueprint. How are you going to find what you're looking for in this integrative literature review? Think about this as a step-by-step process of how you will find the articles that you'll do in Part 2. How are you going to go about finding them? What parameters are you going to set? What Boolean phrases are you going to use? What languages will you select? What journals which search engines will you use? And you can drill it down to journals. I don't know that I would do that, but you can. Put down enough detail so that I could use your narrative of this section, go into the search engine you state you're going to use, click the buttons that you stated you clicked, and find the same articles that you found. It is so important that you create a predictable, clear blueprint for how you will conduct this integrative literature review. Failure to do this step calls into question the validity of the outcome. So if your step 1 says, I'm going to use this database, these 5 years of a parameter, and I'm going to use these 5 keywords, and you go into the literature and you don't use, let's say instead of the 5-year parameter, you broaden it to 10. And instead of the keywords you picked, you added 5 or 6 new. So you wound up with 10 or 11 keywords. So what you found, what would be in your matrix and how in the information you'd analyze to answer your PICO question would not be congruent to the methodology that you listed out in your part 1. So the findings would not be congruent. Now I will tell you that I'm going to have you do part 1 tight. You need to do it correctly. You need to follow the format. You need to be detailed. When you start part 2, you may walk in a circle because for whatever reason, you picked a database that wasn't the best for what you're looking for. You may have to broaden your dates. Instead of 5 years, you may have to go to 10 depending on the age of the concept you're looking at. We may have to make changes to part 1 because we had to do it for part 2 to work. That is not uncommon, folks. For people that research, we revise our research plan all the time. But for our purposes, we're going to do plan 1 in part 1, and then we're going to move to part 2, follow what we've said we were going to do, and then tweak it as we need to. But we're going to go back to, I'm not doing it, you're doing it. Part 1, you're going to go back to part 1 and you're going to revise and edit that section so that part 1 matches part 2. And that part 3, where you're analyzing your findings, analyzes what you actually found in part 2, which is what you said you were going to look for in part 1. It's all got to flow. If you do not do this process properly, your findings will not matter. It simply won't, because we don't know how you actually found the findings, and we don't know that you followed good research practice. So this is the plan. So start out strong in part 1 so you have less revisions to do in part 2. But if you have revisions to do in part 2, do not panic. That is common. But the better effort you make in part 1, the better off you will be. Okay, I think I've got this. Let me know if you have questions or concerns. Be brave, find something that you're interested in, pick a PICO that is interesting to you and is relevant to your practice. If you do pediatrics and you are all about little people, it does not make sense for you to do something that has anything to do with nurse educators providing support for nurses in a geriatric population. Pick the things you like, because then it matters and you'll be more excited about it. The other thing to remember is that I got nothing. You can tell it's been a long day. I can't remember what the other thing was. Nope, got nothing. If I figure it out, I'll email you. All right, so as you move through this, if you have questions or concerns, please touch base. Let me know how you are. Remember to use the Ask the Professor link for general questions, especially the where do I find, where can I locate, what about the process, where do I put this? Those kinds of things, ask yourself, is someone else going to ask this question? If it's personal to you, specific to your situation, please email me. I'm happy to answer emails, but I do want to help you support your peers so that we're answering as many questions congruently as possible, and that helps me organize them. So have fun with this, be excited about it, and let me know how I can support you in your process in doing this. Do not get stressed out about this. You have lots of opportunities to polish and clarify before you get to the end point. So just take your time. I hope you guys are at some point having a good week and relaxing today. As you can see, I decided to work today. So now I need a nap. Have a great day, guys. Take care.